Welcome to tonight's Down on the Corner, episode 33. We're thrilled to welcome a very special guest, former Major League Baseball player and coach Dave Magadan. Dave's 16-year career in the majors saw him establish himself as a reliable and above-average hitter, both at first and third base. Native of Tampa, Florida, Dave was fortunate to grow up with a baseball mentor and his cousin and godfather, former Major League manager Lou Piniella, who also managed with him during his time with the Seattle Mariners. Dave's journey to the big leagues began in 1986 when he made a memorable debut for the New York Mets, hitting a double in his first at-bat, impressing the fans with his .444 batting average in a brief stint that fall. Although he missed out on the Mets World Series championship that year, he was awarded a World Series ring in 1995 for his contributions to the team. Over the years, Dave's ability to provide a quality at-bat in clutch situations and play solid defense made him a steady presence in the Mets lineup. We'll be diving into his time with the Mets, his thoughts on the game then and now, his impressive coaching career where he's had an impact with teams like the Padres, Red Sox, and Rangers, from playing alongside with greats like Keith Hernandez and Howard Johnson to coaching some of the league's top talent. So as always, I will start off the questioning and then we'll turn it over to the Zoom room. Right now, we ask that you all keep yourself muted until I call on you towards the end of the show. I'll get it started. So, Dave, your father was actually a talented multi-sport athlete who ever overcame a devastating injury, but he never got a chance to fully pursue a professional career. I know, if I remember this correctly, he actually had a tryout with the Yankees at one point. What stories did he share with you about his playing days and his love of sports?
Well, the main thing he shared with me is don't ever play football because that's what ended up. He was a wide receiver and not that I would have ever been a wide receiver. You have to be able to run a little bit, but he got a knee in the side, and his vertebrae, I think his vertebrae broke, and it punctured his kidney. So he was like never allowed us to play football or anything like that. So it made me concentrate on basketball and baseball and but he shared his love of the game. He was the one that took me and my brother out. Actually took Lou out too when he was young. Took him out to take BP, and he would throw BP to me and my brother, and he was certainly a big reason why I ended up making it to the big leagues.
You mentioned Lou. We mentioned him in the opening. He's your cousin and your godfather. Lou Piniella had a long, successful career as both a player and manager. Growing up, and you actually traveled to see him play. What kind of influence did he have, if any, at a young age?
Well, the biggest thing I would say was that I had somebody in my family that made it to professional baseball and eventually made it to the big leagues. So it gave me the mindset that it was something that was attainable. You have your cousin that's making it to the big leagues, ended up winning the Rookie of the Year, and we got to see him play a lot in the minor leagues. Ended up going to Kansas City and seeing him play. To have somebody like that was such a big influence, not only seeing him attain the highest level of baseball, but he used to give us a lot of equipment too. I was always always had Lou's gloves. Me and my brother used Lou's gloves all throughout Little League. We were the envy of the league. Of course, I was using an outfielder's glove to play third base and shortstop, and this massive glove, and it's hard to miss anything with that thing. But I think the biggest thing was that he gave us he made the dream more of a reality because we had somebody in our family that was in the big leagues.
So you have an outstanding high school career, excelling both as a hitter and a pitcher. You win the Tony Saladino Award. Looking back, what moments or lesson from your high school days had the biggest impact on your development as a player that helped you through the minors and get to the majors?
Well, I think a huge influence with me was my high school coach. My last year, my senior year, was David Kent. He played professional baseball and made it to AAA with the Cardinals. He came into my life my last year in high school, and I think if he hadn't have, I probably would have never made it to Alabama, and who knows what would have happened at that point. He believed in me. He's the one that picked up the phone, called the scouts, had the scouts come to our games, called Alabama, said, "Hey, you need to see this kid," and he was probably the number one reason why I ended up at Alabama. So I owe a lot to him, and I always say when I speak to big groups that I was so fortunate in my career. It seemed like every time there was whether it was a fork in the road or something bad could have happened, I always had somebody come into my life that had a huge influence on my career and ended up helping me to get to the next level. And certainly, David Kent was that guy early on.
So you mentioned Alabama. You're drafted out of high school, but you chose to attend Alabama over signing with the Red Sox at that point. What ultimately led you to that choice, and how did your time at Alabama shape you both on and off the field?
So I was not ready to play pro ball. I was 6'3", probably about 175 pounds. Wasn't real strong. I was a very young senior. I was 17 years old. I just turned 17 that September of my senior year. So when I got to Alabama, I was still 17 years old. So I definitely was not ready to play pro ball at that point. So I think what Alabama did was it gave me an opportunity to mature on the field and mature as a man off the field. Coach Barry Schallenberger, who was my head coach there all 3 years that I was at Alabama, he was, uh, it's not like it is now where you don't see a lot of freshmen play at
Right.
four-year schools. That doesn't happen a lot, but he gave me the opportunity right away, and I was able to run with it and was a starter for 3 years there. But definitely, I was able to mature, especially as a baseball player, because I got stronger, put on some weight, and I ended up going to Alaska my summer before my junior year that I got drafted and went with the Mets. Got to play against the best competition in college baseball, and I think that gave me a lot of confidence going into my last year at Alabama.
It's also interesting. As a junior at Alabama, I think might have been Craig Shipley that joined the team, and which kind of facilitated a move from third base to first base for you to accommodate the team's needs. And it didn't impact your hitting whatsoever as you put up incredible numbers. So before last night and the Mets signing, re-signing Pete Alonso, a lot of talk was moving Mark Vientos, who really made tremendous strides this season at third base, solidified that position, claimed it as his own. A lot of talk about moving him over to first base. So for someone who's made that switch from third base to first base, people don't really understand that there's a lot that goes into changing positions. It's not just as easy as putting a glove on it and moving over to the other side of the infield. What did that transition mean for you?
Well, I mean, you're right about that. I think as a first baseman, you have an effect on everybody in the infield. I think when they have confidence in you over there at first, that you're going to pick balls in the dirt, you're gonna make the plays when you got to come off the bag and make the tag or the runner running up the first base line. When they have confidence to just get you the ball and you're going to make the plays, it makes your infield a lot better. And I learned that from Keith at very, very early on. I took a lot of pride in my defense. I'm not known for my defense, but I think as I got older, uh, I ended up having some coaches enter into my career that really made me better. You know, Never a Gold Glover, but I was serviceable, especially at third base. But I felt like at first base, I came into my own when I finally got a chance to play every day over there, and I felt like guys had confidence in me over there, and I think from Keith, I learned a lot about just being a leader in the infield. Knowing when to go and talk to the pitcher, calm him down. Little things like that that I observed Keith doing for 3 or 4 years that I felt like, uh, seeing it firsthand, it made me a better teammate and it made me a better first baseman.
It's interesting you mentioned about your defense because I think, sometimes the guys who are just steady defenders, don't always make that flashy play, but make the plays they're supposed to, kind of get overlooked. I look no further than your Stratomatic card. I mean, whoever rated your defense in Stratomatic needs to be fired. You are definitely not a four defender, but your three column is deadly, man, for sure. Speaking about the Mets and Keith, you take a look as a young kid rising up the Mets minor league system where you raked in the minor league system. At that point, you got Huey Brooks at one point at third base and Hojo, Kevin Mitchell. You got Keith over at first base. as a young player, like you take a look at a lot of these guys in the Met system, like Luis Angel Acuna. He's looking at a shortstop who signed here for the next 11 years. He's looking at Vientos at third base. I guess he says, all right, maybe, McNeil, maybe that's my shot. But when you're down in the minors and you're looking at those guys in front of you, what's the thought process? Do you not even think about that? You just do the daily grind and figure, all right, either I'm gonna make it to their team or I'm gonna make them trade me somewhere where I'm gonna play.
You know what? To be honest with you, I never gave it any thought. We were so loaded in the minor leagues when I first signed with the Mets. We had studs at every level. I just wanted to do. When I signed, I went to Columbia in low A ball. I just wanted to have a good half season. Get my feet wet in pro ball. When I went to Lynchburg the next year, same thing. I just wanted to be the best player I could be at that level. I never really looked ahead. I never saw who was in front of me. I always felt, and my dad kind of instilled this in me, don't worry about that stuff. That you don't have any control over that. Go out there, have a good year. If you don't play for the Mets, you're going to play for somebody else. Somebody's going to see you. And it was tough because we were loaded in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
And, if you did look up and you saw the guys that were in Double A and Triple A, it could be a little disheartening. So I just tried to be a good player, whatever level I was at, try and make the All-Star team, and then let the chips fall where they may, and don't worry about the guys in front of me.
Even today, you put certain requirements on certain position. Corner infield is a lot about power, even back then. But you raked at every single, stop in the minors. But the one knock on you was the power numbers. Was there ever a moment where you might have thought about changing your game a little bit to try and increase the power, or was it always, listen, this is what got me signed, this is what got me here. I'm going to continue the course.
I think the consensus with me is, I think, with Joe McIlvaine, who kind of over he was the head of our minor leagues, eventually the scouting. Steve Schreiber was there overlooking the minor leagues, and I think the consensus was, leave me alone, just let him hit, let him play. He's going to eventually grow into his power. He's going to get stronger. And, I appreciated that. Eventually, I think I learned to appreciate it. But I think, I'm proud of my career. I played 15 years. A lot of guys would die to be able to play 15 years in the big leagues. But, I was only an everyday player for maybe 3 or 4 of those years. A lot of platooning, a lot of hitting off the bench. And I think if I had somebody when I first got into pro ball that really knew the mechanics of hitting and hitting the ball over the fence and pulling the ball in the air and the stuff that I grew to know as I got older, and eventually as a hitting coach, I grew to know, and but I didn't have that. They kind of left me alone, and I was just trying to get hits and hit for high average and swing at strikes and take my walks, and I didn't know how to hit a home run. I certainly hit doubles and drove the ball into the gap, but I didn't hit the ball in the air a lot. I hit a lot of line drives, and I think if I'd have had that influence early on when I first got into pro ball, because it was unfair, right? Now I get to the big leagues. I'm a career 330 hitter in the minors. Now I get to the big league, it's like, oh, you got to hit for power. Well, that's tough because first of all, I'm not playing every day. So when I get in there, I just want to be able to get hits and stay in the lineup, stay in the big leagues. And in that respect, it was a little unfair to ask that of me when I finally got to the big leagues. But I certainly wouldn't trade my career for anything. I had a lot of fun, and I'm proud of it.
It's interesting because you get called up when, back in the day where the expanded major league rosters were bigger than what you can call up now. But as a young player, you got to witness those pros like Keith and Gary and Straw going through the stretch run of a pennant drive. What's that like for a young kid? Like Acuna got to do that this year in pressure-filled games, and he actually, because of Lindor's injury, actually played in those games, as did you. I mean, you actually are in because of Keith being sick, you're on the field when the Mets clinch. So walk us through that and that experience.
Well, I was scared to death. We certainly we're looking at our major league team in AAA, seeing how they were running away with the division, and they were loaded with pitching, hitting. So I wasn't even thinking about getting called up. So when our season ended and Sam Perlazzo brought us in and told us we were going up, I was shocked. So we get up there, and it's like I just wanted to stay out of everybody's way. I didn't want to like. And sure enough, first batting practice, my bats weren't there yet, and Charlie Samuel says, just grab one of Danny Heap's bats. So I go and grab one of his bats. It was pretty close to the same model I used, and I start taking BP, and here comes Danny Heap from left field, comes running in to our bat, the middle of our group, and just snatches the bat away from me and says, "Don't you ever use one of my bats." I'm like, all right, good start. So, that's kind of how my first major league BP started. So I think we were all, Stan Jefferson, John Mitchell got called up, Barry Lyons was called up. We were just happy to be there, just wanted to stay out of everybody's way, even though I didn't from the get-go, taking Danny's bat. But, it was certainly pretty cool seeing their run and seeing how good they were. Very spoiled to be able to see that, my first experience in the big leagues.
I have a few more before we turn it over to the Zoom room. I remember, I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was something that definitely stuck with me. It was an article where you had mentioned that during your early days, you struggled with anger and frustration, the mental part of the game, and carrying that emotional weight both on and off the field. And if I remember this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned that you learned to manage the mental side of the game after the birth of your first son. So, what was that about the birth of a child that allowed you to change your mindset and influence your, mental approach to the game?
I think when you have your first child, you start thinking about trying to be a better man. And it was very embarrassing the way I acted, not only in pro ball, but even at Alabama. I could go be 2 for 2 and making out my third at bat, and I throw my bat and throw my helmet. And my Coach Schallenberger, talked to me about that I've got to be able to control my emotions, and I just had a real hard time doing that. And it was like that throughout my minor league career. And then finally, when my son Jordan was born, I think I don't know. I just started thinking, I've got to be a better person. I've got to be a better man, and I think I'm still working on that. But I think that was certainly the first light bulb moment that I had to mature and grow up.
You're not alone, that's for sure. Given your strong understanding of the strike zone and your ability to take pitches, you were known for your base, your those skills, and kind of slotted out as a number two hitter in a lineup. With today's game placing a high value on advanced metrics like OBP and plate discipline, do you ever think where you would fit in today's game and might influence the way your career would be evaluated today?
I think so. I think the guys that are able to make swing changes. The first guy that comes to mind is Max Muncy, who was very similar to myself. He was in the minor leagues with the A's. Didn't hit for a ton of power, more power than I did, but he was known for being a line drive hitter, hit the ball the other way, took his walks, still takes his walks. And I think he was able to really uh, find a hitting coach. And I know Van Scoyac there in LA had a big hand in making changes with him, and recognizing that he could be a guy that if he could make a swing change and learn to get the ball up in the air, especially to the pull side, that his awareness of the strike zone he was gonna be able to achieve that goal of hitting the ball out of the park. And that certainly fit my DNA coming through the minor leagues. I was a guy that I could put the bat on the ball. I didn't strike out. I knew the strike zone. But if somebody could have shown me how to pull the ball in the air, uh, look to drive the ball, look in certain counts to try and drive the ball, my career probably would have been different because I certainly fit the profile of somebody that if I was putting up the same numbers in the minor leagues now as I did back then, I certainly would have been targeted as a guy that can make a swing change and go from a 2, 3, 4 home run guy to 15 to 20 home run guy for sure.
So this is the beauty of the Zoom room. He popped on for a second, but it looks like he turned his camera off. Your teammate Mackey Sasser is in the Zoom room as well. I've got one more question before. There's Mackey. How you doing,
Mackey,
Mackey? Hold on, let me
Sass, what's
unmute.
happening?
Let me unmute him. Hey, Mackey, unmute yourself. He's trying, I think. He's having difficulty with his mic. Hopefully he'll get that corrected, and then we'll have him hop on. I got one more question before I turn it over to the guys in the Zoom room, and it's one of my guilty pleasures these days. I love watching Jeff Fry's daily Twitter and Facebook when he goes after Teacher Man. You after that successful career as a player, you transition into coaching, working with several organizations, the Padres, Red Sox, Rangers, Diamondbacks. During your time as hitting coach, you helped teams improve their offensive numbers, contributing to championship playoff runs. Given how private hitting instructors, I coach a U17 team and I see all these kids go to different hitting instructors. It's turned into a huge business. What do you think makes a good hitting coach at the major league level? And for parents seeking hitting coaches for their kids, what should be the first question they ask when considering, you know, this is, once they're like 15 on, this is career, it might be scholarship or even just furthering their baseball careers. What's the most important thing they should be asking?
Well, I think, it's so different when you're a major league hitting coach as opposed to even a minor league hitting coach. And then certainly as you go down the line, amateur ranks, high school, 15, 14-year-olds. My job as a major league hitting coach was to understand what made whoever the hitter was to get him to do what he needs to do to be his best self on a daily basis. And I had to understand what that was. Now, if somebody wanted to make a swing change and they were looking to improve, that was something that we can do in the off season. But in the constraints of the regular season, there's really not a whole lot of time to make huge swing changes. So understanding what made each guy tick, whether it was mentally or physically, what he had to do mechanically to put his best swing on every pitch, that's what my job as a major league hitting coach was. And certainly getting everybody to buy into team offense. We did such a good job of that in Boston when I was there for the 6 years, when I eventually went to Texas, how all the at-bats are linked throughout the lineup. My at-bat as the leadoff hitter is linked to the second guy and the third guy and the fourth guy, and you have to look at what's going on in the game. If the guy's struggling to throw the ball over the plate, be a little more selective up there and look for a pitch in your zone. And so that more or less is what I feel the major league hitting coach's job is. Now, as you go down the line and you talked about a 14 or 15-year-old, unfortunately, there's a lot of malpractice out there in these hitting gurus throughout the country. It's so frustrating. I had to deal with it my last 4 or 5 years as a hitting coach in the big leagues, where a lot of my guys had hitting coaches in the off season. And let me tell you, there's no easier job in baseball than being a hitting coach in the off season, when you don't have to worry about going 0 for 4 or hitting 94-mile-an-hour cutters on your hands. You don't ever have to deal with an offer. You're just flipping balls in the cage going, wow, that looks great. You're always a good cop, So then they come to me during the season, in spring training, and they're a mess. And now I've got to try and fix them. So it was very, very frustrating. Very few of the guys that I had that had their personal hitting guys in the off season, they didn't want to be a part of the conversation during the season, right? Because they didn't want to have to deal with all the negativity that comes with going one for 30, and striking out and doing poorly and for long periods of time. So it was a huge source of frustration for me because there were a few good ones that were willing to get on the phone with me and we can kind of tag team coach these guys. But I can't even begin to tell you how many careers of players that I had were absolutely derailed by these hitting guys in the offseason that tried to make swinging changes with these guys that were already good hitters.
Yeah.
And they made changes, and these guys believed what they were saying, and they were never the same. And it was absolutely disgusting to see that, but it's what's going on in the game right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because and all of these guys take to whether it be TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, and they post these videos. And there was one guy the other day, and like I just don't. I love just watching Jeff Fry because I love when he gets into it. But this one guy just made me go crazy. He said, these old school guys who were throwing you this swing path and don't like the uppercut swing is because back in the day, no one threw high fastballs. And I'm
Right.
saying, dude, so Sandy Koufax never threw a high fastball. Don Drysdale never threw a high fastball. Juan Marichal, like, what are you talking about? Like,
You know how
just
you hit a high fastball? You get on try and get on top of the high
top of
fastball.
right.
Swing up at a high fastball. That's why there's guys striking out 220 times now. That's why.
Yep, it's unbelievable.
But these are guys. These are guys that have never been in the batter's box in a major league game. They don't have any idea what swing thoughts you have to hit a 97-mile-an-hour fastball in the top of the zone. First of all, don't swing at it. That's the number one thing because it's a ball. But I know Mackey, he can hit 96, and he wasn't swinging up at that pitch. He was getting on top of that thing, and he was hitting a line drive to left center.
and
So
people they don't even realize the major league. Like I don't know if Mackey's probably not going to remember this, but there's one fantasy camp that I'm at, and the pro game I get to hit against Ricky Bones, right? So the first pitch he throws a fastball, and this is Ricky, 10 years removed or 8 years removed from the major leagues, but that fastball is still like I'm 3 months late on it, right? So all right, like I saw it, I go, all right, now I know what's coming. And the next pitch, like I timed it and I fouled it off like way late. But like now I'm all right, like I fouled this off. Next pitch is coming right at my head. I bail. It buckles me. I like wail out. That ball just drops off the table into that time I think it's John Stern's glove right over the plate. And Lenny Harris is cracking up at third base and he walks over to me. He goes, "Now you got something to talk about on the radio, huh?" I go, "Damn straight, man." Like, yeah, it's just it's a whole different
you just need
ball
a
game.
teacher man. You need a teacher man to give you a few
Yeah,
lessons.
exactly. I gotta, snap that wrist. So how you doing, Mackie?
I'm doing good, man. Y'all
How's your
doing
team?
okay?
Good. How's your team doing?
I'm retired. I don't coach no
Oh,
more.
I thought you're still coaching.
No, I retired in 22.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Time does fly, man.
We both
Yeah,
we both retired after
sure
22.
does. Yeah, Dave, you doing okay?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good, enjoying
Look
life.
good.
Thank you, man. Just got off the golf course.
I wish I had. I just got out of getting my ear cut on a little cancer.
Oh
A
Oh,
wow.
little
man.
late. Yeah, but everything you just said is the same reason I got out of college baseball. Coaches at Christmas doing the same thing, and they come back and everything's totally changed. Same
Incredible.
exact stuff.
Yeah.
I had a player when I was with the Diamondbacks that I'm not going to say his name, but young player, had really good minor league career, got to the big leagues, had 2 really good years for us. Hit for a little bit of power. He could run, hit for a decent average. So after his second year with us in Arizona, he went to teacher man.
Uh,
And he came to spring training that next spring. And this kid was one of the best fastball hitters I'd ever seen. And all of a sudden in spring training, he's hitting in the cage off the machine. He's hitting everything in the top of the cage, underneath everything. Now we start hitting live BP. Couldn't even make contact in live BP. So I'm like, see, he didn't even tell me he went to teacher man. So I'm like, what's going on? You're like, you can't hit a fastball. He goes, well, I'm trying to, to get the ball in the air and, I want to try and hit more home runs. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So he ended up like he made our team, had a horrible spring, made our team. By the middle of the season, he was back in AAA, and he was never the same player ever since. Completely, he was on the verge of being a star on our team, and he ended up bouncing around for a few years and then out of the game now. Those are the stories you don't hear Teacher Man talk about.
And you never see Teacher Man take live BP either. That's the beauty of it.
And who would want to see it?
Yeah, that's true. All right, we're gonna open up the Zoom room to questions, and we got a double special guest. So if you guys have questions, Mackey, you mind taking questions if people got questions?
No,
for
I
you?
don't mind. I was just getting on. Me and Dave go way back. We're good, really close back in the day. We ain't talked in a while.
Awesome. All right, so you can raise your hand using the raise hand function, or as Damon, he's doing it, just raising it that way. So go ahead, Damon, unmute and ask your question.
Hey, Mark. How are you? Thanks for having me again.
No worries.
Hello, Dave. Hello, Mackey. It's nice, special getting Mackey on here too. Big fan. Question for, I guess, if both you guys want to answer. Well, actually, Dave first, because I want to talk about his cousin, Lou Piniella. Lou was a classic guest hitter. He said that's what he had all success was with being a guest hitter. Did he teach you that? And when you went up to the plate, what was your approach as a hitter?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was not a guest hitter. I always hit off the fastball or tried to. Lou, I didn't talk a lot about hitting with Lou growing up because he was so much older than I was. He was already on the road playing in the minor leagues when I was, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. So he just gave me advice like, the standbys, right? The old standbys. You got to work hard. You got to work harder than the next guy. You got to, all that stuff that he talked to us about. Never really talked too much hitting with me as far as the intricacies of guessing and stuff like that. Lou and I couldn't be any further from being the same hitter. He was a guy that never walked. He didn't strike out, but he never walked. He was an early in the count guy, and I was a guy that saw a lot of pitches.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did you want a question into Mackey?
Yeah, sure. Mackey, how about you? When you went up to the plate, what was your approach?
Well, I'll just feed off of Dave. I don't mean jumping in on his show, but David was a totally different hitter than me. I mean, I was a very aggressive hitter, and that's probably why my career may not last as long with, throwing problem, but I could hit though. But I was very aggressive. So I was up there looking for the first fastball I can get on and not miss it. And through that whole at bat's what I was looking for, and then I adjust. David, was more of a patient hitter. He was looking for pitches, doing what he had to do, and there's many times, and Dave probably can remember, he'd come back to the dugout. I said, why didn't you hit that 3-1? And he would say, because I'm going to get it the same pitch the next day, 3-2. So, I'm not going to hit it. And sure enough, he'd take it. Whereas I just got right all on that ball. And so David he was more patient, but he had great bat control. And where I was more of an aggressive guy. And, it got me in trouble a lot of times because I got around the league and I'm swinging at split fingers early in the count and doing things. And it cost me, but he was a patient hitter. And so, it worked out for him. I mean, he played a lot of years and he became a great coach. And, that was his style. My style was being very aggressive. And I think I learned a lot of that coming off the bench early in my career with the Mets. Coming off the bench late and in, you got to be aggressive and get after it. So it kind of just stayed in my role when I did get a chance to start.
Before I go to John, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that today is the anniversary, the passing, I believe it's 11 years already, of Ralph Kiner. And I know that Mackey was on Kiner's Corner. I know he got his members-only leather jacket. And I know that Dave Magadan was also on Kiner's Corner. I remember the episode, which is up on our website at Wrigley Field. For both of you, what was it like being on Kiner's Corner? And, it was a different generation. Like when Ralph started, a $25 gift certificate to a steakhouse was a big deal. Even for Dwight, I remember Dwight telling me like those Getty gas certificates, he loved those. He never had to pay for gas. He loved those. So, what was it like for you guys to be on? Dave, go first.
Well, I mean, it was an honor. I mean, to have a Hall of Famer to ask you questions after a game. I think I still have some of the Armatron watches that I used to get for appearing on those shows. Some of those gift certificates, and whether it was going to Rusty's or Peter Luger or whatever it was a lot of fun. But Ralph, he was such a legend. It was nerve-wracking going on that show. And you talk about, I couldn't have been any further from being the type of hitter Ralph was. I mean, he was a slugger, I know he had a shorter career because he had injuries. I think he only played 12, 13 years, but he averaged over 40 home runs a year. And so whenever I could, I tried to talk hitting with him. But he certainly kept it simple as far as the hitting was concerned. He didn't really go into too much detail. He was like, get your good pitch and drive it over the fence. I'm like, all right, I'll do that. And I was lucky to do it 3 or 4 times a year.
How about you, Mac?
I enjoyed it. It was a fun time because it's like me talking to a foreigner and him talking to a foreigner. The Alabama accent, his accent. He called me he always called me Mikey. He never called me Mackey. It was always a different name. So it was, but it was a fun time. I mean, you knew you were gonna have a fun time when you got on. And so, he was a great guy. He understood the game. It's just sometimes it came out wrong, but that was what made Ralph Kiner. I mean, he was kind of a clown in a suit, and he'd come up with things and say things, and you just have to go with the flow. He talked to me a lot of times, and I really didn't kind of know what he was talking about sometimes. We just keep on moving right through the conversation.
All right, Johnny, you had your hand raised. John Coppinger, a member of the KINER'S Corner staff, great writer. What do you got, Johnny?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to talk to all you guys, talk to you, Dave and Mackey. My question for you, Dave, I wanted to follow up on Mark's last question about coaching. You coached for 20 years, and in that 20 years, the launch angle revolution has kind of crept into the game more and more. Did you feel, especially as a hitter who liked to hit the ball hard, hit line drives, did you feel that you had to change or alter your approach to coaching these guys with the advent of the launch angle and of these swing coaches and swing doctors? Did you change your approach at all, or did you stay consistent?
No, I didn't change. I certainly used the tools of the analytics and stuff to help me get guys to do what I wanted them to do at the plate. The game doesn't change, right? If you try and hit a line drive, say just try and hit a line drive to left center or right center, my miss in the air is going to be a home run. If I barrel that ball up and I get under it and I hit it at a higher launch angle, it's going to be a home run. When you're trying to hit a ball in the air and you miss it, it's going to be a pop-up, or you're going to swing through it, or you're going to foul it off. And that's as simple as I try to keep it. I think if you try and go up there and hit a hard line drive through the middle of the field, your misses are going to be home runs or doubles or hard ground balls. But when you're trying to hit everything up in the air, baseball is a game that's played on the margins, and it's, you're only as good as your misses. And, it's much like golf, right? Golf, you're only going to be as good as your bad shots. Baseball's the same way, because, Mackey could attest to this, that how many times do you really click a ball perfectly? Like, you just put a perfect swing and you hit it right in the perfect spot. It doesn't really happen a whole lot. Your game is always, I'm a little bit late, I'm a little bit out in front, the ball's a little higher than I thought, it's a little lower. And if you're always trying to lift those balls, to me, that's why you have guys hitting, 210 they're popping home runs. But it's a hard game to watch now, because it's 14, 15, 16 strikeouts. It's like, I think the good teams, and the stats are starting to bear it out, the teams that are going to the postseason are the teams that put the ball in play. They don't strike out as much. They get on base. They're walking. They're not striking out. Their guys aren't striking out 180, 190 times. They're still hitting the ball over the fence, but to me, it's hit a line drive to the middle, and your misses are going to be pretty good.
So you feel there's a shift going back to how it was maybe a little bit in the majors today?
I think so. I was very fortunate when I was with, started out with San Diego, then I went to Boston, Texas, Arizona, and then eventually Colorado. Our players did not, for the most part, didn't buy into that, trying to, lift the ball in the air. I mean, Nolan Arenado, my first year there in Denver, hit 43 home runs, and all he talked about was staying on top of the ball, staying on top of the ball. Man, I'm getting underneath. Staying on top. He hit 43 home runs. So, it's certainly, it's feel over real probably. You're not really swinging straight down, but when you feel like you can get on top of balls, that's when you backspin them and you hit them in the air to the pole side.
So the tough part is, from a coaching standpoint, is there's so much information available to you. So like you have tryouts, and if you're at a facility that's got hit tracks, you can see the exit velocity. And the kids have to every swing turn around to see how. And I keep on telling them, if you need that to let you know that you barreled up a ball, then you shouldn't even be playing the game. But in the same respect, when let's say you're down to two kids and they both have good, ball to, bat to ball contact, but you see one kid's exit velocity is a little, uptick compared to the other, it's kind of hard not to take that kid. So that, some of the metrics are good, but sometimes I think it skews things. Like, I'm just wondering if in today's game there'd be a place for a Tony Gwynn. Like Luis Arraez, for what he does, I believe that guy is probably one of the most undervalued player in all of baseball. No one cares about 300 hitters anymore when that was the gold standard back in the day.
Yeah, I think what Arraez is he's kind of running into now is that he's a very good hitter. He's got unbelievable bat to ball skills, but he doesn't walk. So if he doesn't get a hit, he's not getting on base. And that is not valued in today's game, right? And he's not a home run hitter.
Right.
So I think in today's game, you have to do one or the other or both. You either got to get on base, or you got to be able to slug, or if you do both, those are the guys making a ton of money. But I think there's room for that still in baseball. And I think the good teams are the ones that get a nice blend of both. And I don't remember what your original point was. What was your original point?
Just with all the analytics, as a coach, it's hard sometimes not to use them to value players when sometimes it doesn't work in the players' half, because I still firmly believe there should be places in the game for more scouting and less on the analytics, but we've become more analytically driven. And that's what coaches look for now. They look.
Well, the analytics are good, and I used analytics. I used them, but I also trusted my eyes too. And I wanted hitters that were going to hit more balls hard than guys that were going to swing and miss, swing and miss, swing and miss, and then hit a ball 120 miles an hour. Right. Give me the guy that's going to hit the ball consistently between 95 and 105, and he's going to hit line drives, and then he's going to pop balls out of the park when he gets them in the air. Give me that guy who's going to be able to hit, and I can trust him when there's a situation when there's a guy on third, less than 2 outs, and he needs to put the ball in play. Or I can't tell you how many times as a hitting coach where a pitcher would come in the game that was throwing 99, 100, 101, and we had a guy hitting that I knew had zero chance of getting a hit. Like, he had no chance. Like, he was naked up there. Like, there was nothing he could do to get a hit. Like, he was just going to get blown away because he was going to be underneath. And, the guy was going to throw him high fastballs. He was going to be underneath everything. And then he's got a cheat because he's got a long swing, and then he breaks the breaking balls, and the at-bat's over. So that's for me as a hitter, that's the ultimate frustration. Like, knowing I have no chance.
Yeah. So Sal, we kind of this is gonna be interesting because Sal is on every show and he always knows who the guest is, and Sal's a collector, so he's got something for everybody. But now we threw you a curveball because you knew Dave's gonna be here. Let's see if he's got something for Mackey. So hold on, Sal, let me get you unmuted.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. All right, go ahead.
You almost got me, Rosie,
Oh, really? We didn't
but
get you? No.
Mackey, I met you. I think it was the first card show you did on Long Island. So I
Ooh,
did
that was a long time ago.
see you, and I got
Oh
you a
man.
couple of these.
Wow.
Thought we were gonna get you, Sal.
Well, that's why I ran off before. It's like I gotta find. I gotta get Mackey stuff. So, are you going to be doing any more of that, Mackey? Any more signings and stuff like that here?
If I can get Dave to talk to his friend me, Chaska, and get me up there, we'll do it.
Both of you, that'll be great.
You gotta speak to Matt Blitt. He'll set it up.
Yeah, I know.
That would be great because you were really nice at the card show to me and everybody else online. And I hope we do get to see you there again. It was great. Now,
Thank you.
look at this fine young man.
Whoa,
Wow.
nice. So
Well, he was good looking back then, wasn't he?
60 pounds ago.
Yeah, that's kind of like that's your rookie card
Wow.
from Donruss. And all my Mets stuff has a very special place in my heart. And the thing with you, Dave, two things. First thing was your swing. I'm like, we have the second coming of Keith Hernandez here. Was Keith any kind of an influence with you on hitting?
Not like on like a one-on-one thing with like he would sit me down and say, but I certainly observed him and
So did I.
yeah, I mean he was remarkable not only as a hitter but as a defender and as a team leader. He was pretty special. So I kind of looked how he went about his business and how he talked to the pitchers. You know, when he saw that a pitcher was kind of losing his cool out there, you'd go up to the mound and calm him down and stuff. And that's stuff that I tried to do when I finally got a chance to play. But he was certainly, you know, closer to being, or I was closer to being his type of hitter than probably, you know, like a Straw or, you know, Gary Carter or somebody like that. So he was a guy that swung at strikes. He didn't strike out a lot. He didn't hit for a ton of power. I certainly would have hoped, you know, if I could have hit his 15 to 20 home runs, my career probably would have been a lot different. But I think, you know, and I think it was before Mackey kind of jumped on board, but, you know, they just left me alone in the minor leagues, like I said earlier, and they just let him do his thing. And then when I get to the big leagues, it's like, oh, he doesn't hit for enough power. And, you know, that was pretty frustrating for me because I'm just trying to survive up there. I'm just trying to get hits and stay in the lineup and do stuff like that. So, but Keith, it was more, you know, trying to follow his example and seeing him play on an everyday basis and seeing how good he was.
That's great. Now, one more thing. I did see your Academy Award performance in Little Big League the other night. Now, the one thing that gets me is you tried to stretch a single into a double. You got thrown out by 10 feet. And I'm thinking, what are you thinking, Dave? How was that experience for you? And
yeah, it was pretty cool. Honestly, I think I'm known more. I think over the last 30 years, people come up to me more about that than about my baseball career. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. But it was great. It was, you know, 2 days of sitting around waiting for them to set up the cameras and that scene of me sliding into second. We did that probably 25 takes because originally the left fielder, who was a kid that ended up being in A Few Good Men, he was one of the people on trial in A Few Good Men. He was our left fielder. He couldn't throw. So what they wanted to do originally was have the camera kind of behind me as a runner and then show him throwing the ball in and throwing me out at second. Well, after like 10 takes of him throwing balls straight into the ground, they're like, we're just going to show him fielding the ball and then throwing, and then we're going to cut to you sliding into second. So
looked like it was a lot of fun, though.
The bigger question is, Sal, like, why are you watching Little Big League right now at your age, man?
My TV turns on to the MLB network and turns off to it every
Okay, all right. I
so
didn't know it was on MLB. All right, I'll
the
cut you some
reason why
slack
he's
for
so
that.
famous because every winter they play all the baseball movies.
Yeah.
So I get to see you every winter, Dave.
Yeah. I'm approached a lot about that.
Great.
So, I'll close with this because, so much in all of sports, you hear about teams developing a culture, and a winning tradition. For years, it was known as the Cardinal way or the Dodger way. Certain organizations just, they built on tradition. You guys came up that whole era, I guess maybe starting in 80, on up, when you started getting the Mookie Wilsons and the Hubie Brookses and Mike Fitzgeralds, the guys that started, and Gardy and Wally Backman, and then you guys and, Straw and Doc. That really was the foundation of that 86 to 88, 89 really good teams. What was it, even coming up in the minors? I think it was Jackson at one point, like all those stops where every team was winning. What was it about the culture that cultivated that winning attitude?
It was great scouting. Joe McIlvaine, I believe when I was drafted, he was the head of scouting. Steve Shriver, who was the head of our minor league system, he was not liked by a lot of guys. I liked him because he was honest. And I could remember, like it was yesterday, I was in the Carolina League. It was my first full season in pro ball, and I was hitting like, I remember at the All-Star break, I was hitting over 400. But I was leading the league in errors at first base too. So he gets to the field and he's like, when you get dressed, come out to the stands. I want to have a talk with you. So he took me to the stands, and I thought he was gonna man, you having such a great year. I mean, I'm so proud of you. And he ripped me you know what? He was like, there's no room in the big leagues for singles hitting, bad defending first baseman. You better get your butt out of get your head out of your butt and start thinking about playing better defense and all that. And it was the best thing I could have heard. And it really changed my career. So I think a lot of it was we had really good people in the minor leagues, not only in the front office, but our coaches and our managers. A lot of those guys ended up being major league couple ended up being major league managers, major league coaches. We had competition at every level, and we talked about winning. I don't know how much talk about winning there is now in the minor leagues. It's all about giving guys days off and resting them and, getting them prepared to be a big league player. And we talked a lot about winning and winning championships, and we took a lot of pride because I think you have to learn how to win, right? You don't just all of a sudden learn in the big leagues. So I think when we were learning how to win in the minors, it kind of carried into our major league careers.
And Mackey, for you, what was that like?
Well, I came up with the Giants, and I came up under Roger Craig, which was a hard-nosed type guy. And, back then the organization did everything he did. And they taught me how to play. Wendell Kim was my manager almost except my freshman, my first year in single A. And after that, Wendell Kim was my manager the rest of the way. And Roger Craig would come over and talk to us, keep his family, and just he wanted to play hardball all the time. It wasn't no sitting around, let's get after it all the time. And that taught me a lot. And then, I got traded to the Pirates and for Don Robinson, and then Mike Diaz, Rambo, first base for Pirates, went down, and I got traded to Mets. And Joe McIlvaine traded for me because he saw me in Jackson play, when I was with the Giants. But Dave was right. He was always honest with you. It's something you might not want to hear, but he told you the truth, and he told you how it's going to be and this and that. And you have a lot of respect for people. And you know what? Between him and Jim Leland, which told you the same thing, he kind of was totally honest with you right up front. That's pretty much how I coached my whole career when I was in college. Just be up front with the kid. They don't want to hear that. But if you be up front and get in their butt and do what you need to do, they'll appreciate it later. And I have a lot of players that come back and tell me that. But,
You mentioned Wendell Kim, and he's one of those guys that when you speak to ball players, any player that he ever came in contact with, they always rave about him. But he's like one of, if you're a guy that watches games, you saw him as a third base coach, you really don't know much about him. But every guy that's ever played for him raves about him. What was it about him that made him so special?
he was just a great player's coach. I mean, he taught you the game. But then, you know, he'll get out there. He would get out there and hit with you. He'd get out there and field with you. He'd get out there and hit anything you want to do. He'd beat you in pool. He'd beat you in ping pong. He will hustle you on anything you had to do. But he was a player's manager in the minor leagues. And all his players loved him. And he just had that little personality. You know, he's only like 5'1", 2. And he had that personality. And then you had Marty DeMeritt, which just passed away, God rest his soul. They just blended great together. And it just made good for the whole team. And that's why they won all the time. He won the league, I don't know how many times everywhere, and it's because of team. It wasn't about individual, it was all about team, and he taught that.
Yeah, it's like Ron Washington today. Pretty
right,
much
that's
the
right.
Same thing. Yeah, Washington's that way as well. Guys, I really appreciate it. Always great talking baseball, especially great seeing you, Mackey. And Dave, thanks so much for doing this. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And it's a great month. Baseball's back. When the calendar turns to February, it's no more months without baseball. So it's
Rose, you got my phone number, don't you?
Yeah.
Give it to Dave when I get off.
You got it. I'll send it
All
to
right.
him right after.
Nice seeing you guys, Dave. Nice seeing you too. Just
Great
be
seeing
safe.
you,
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care, man.
Thank you,
Take care,
guys.
guys.